Arab executive sees his African ex giving birth to twins. What he does next moves everyone in the hospital. He hadn't seen her in over a year. She had disappeared from his life without explanation, without a trace. But fate isn't subtle. It prefers drama. On a random afternoon in Dubai's most elite hospital, he walked in for a routine meeting with the hospital board and saw her being rushed in on a stretcher, screaming in pain, pregnant, with twins. His heart stopped. It couldn't be, but it was. The woman he had once loved more than anything. And the babies. They looked just like him. Everyone in the hospital froze when they saw his reaction. What he did next brought tears to the eyes of nurses, doctors, even strangers watching from afar. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. That's how you help us bring more true, powerful stories like this one to life. Let's dive in. The glass doors of Al Hayat Royal Hospital slid open with a gentle swoosh, releasing a gust of cool air that clashed with the dry Dubai heat outside. Khalid Al-Fahim, 42, walked in with his usual quiet confidence. Dressed in a tailored navy suit, his silver cufflinks gleaming subtly beneath his sleeve, he was the picture of calm authority. Every step he took echoed with the unspoken power of a man who had built his fortune from sand and ambition. Today's agenda was simple. A quick visit to the board meeting on the hospital's top floor. He was one of the key donors, after all, and then back to the office. Nothing unusual, nothing emotional. Until he heard the scream. It came from around the corner, raw, powerful, unmistakably a woman in labor. His stride faltered just for a moment. It wasn't the scream itself that stopped him. It was the voice behind it. There was something hauntingly familiar in the way she cried out, like a sound he hadn't heard in years, but could never forget. A nurse brushed past him, shouting into her earpiece. "We need a double setup. She's having twins." Khalid's eyes narrowed. Twins. He turned, instinctively drawn toward the chaos in the emergency corridor. And then he saw her. Zahara. Time slowed. She was lying on a stretcher, sweat beading on her forehead, her long braided hair sticking to her cheeks. Her hands gripped the sheets in agony, but her eyes, they opened. And for one impossible moment, they locked with his. She looked just as shocked as he felt. No, more than shocked. Terrified. Khalid's chest tightened. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. He took a step forward, but the nurses were already wheeling her away, through the double doors that led to labor and delivery. "Sir, you can't be here," one of them said, motioning him back. "I know her," he said quietly, but the words caught in his throat. How could he explain? She was the one woman he had ever truly loved. The one he had planned a future with, until her sudden disappearance shattered everything. No goodbye, no closure. only silence. And now she was giving birth to twins. He stood frozen in the hallway for what felt like hours. Logic told him to leave, to walk away and pretend this never happened. That's what his father would have done. That's what pride demanded. But his heart had never listened to logic, not when it came to Zahara. He paced. He sat. He stared at the clock, each minute scraping against his nerves like sandpaper. He didn't even notice the board members texting, wondering where he was. All he could see were her eyes, the panic in them, the pain. Then, after nearly 2 hours, the doors opened. A young nurse stepped out, looking exhausted but smiling. "She's okay. Both babies are breathing strong, a boy and a girl." Khalid felt his legs go weak. The nurse glanced at her clipboard. "Are you family?" He hesitated. Then he said the words that came without thinking. "Yes, I need to see her. Please." The nurse hesitated, unsure. "She knows me," Khalid added, softer this time. "Tell her Khalid is here. Just that." The nurse nodded and disappeared down the corridor. He waited, his palms sweating now. 5 minutes later, the nurse returned. She said yes. He stepped through the doors slowly, his breath shallow. The sterile hallway gave way to the soft beeping of machines, the scent of antiseptic, and the faint cries of newborns. And there, in the corner room, under dim lights, lay Zahara, holding 2 tiny swaddled infants to her chest. She looked up as he entered, her eyes filled with something he couldn't read. Fear, guilt, maybe hope, maybe all of them. "You came," she whispered. "I didn't know," he said, voice cracking. "I didn't know, Zahara." She nodded slowly. "I didn't mean for you to find out like this." And then, without warning, one of the babies stirred. A soft coo escaped from the little girl's mouth, and she blinked up toward Khalid. He took another step forward, knees trembling. "She's your daughter," Zahara said. He stared at the child, then at the boy in her other arm. "They both are." Khalid felt something inside him break wide open. The anger, the confusion, the betrayal, all of it crumbled under the weight of a truth too overwhelming to deny. "I missed everything," he whispered. Zahara nodded, eyes glassy. "But you're here now." He reached out slowly and touched his daughter's tiny hand. And just like that, the story that had ended so long ago had suddenly begun again. The room was quiet now, except for the soft sounds of 2 tiny new lives breathing against their mother's chest. Zahara looked exhausted, her skin damp with sweat, hair matted to her temples, eyes heavy but still sharp, still strong. She had always been that way, fierce, unshaken even when the world seemed to collapse. And yet now, with Khalid standing beside her hospital bed, she looked vulnerable. Khalid hadn't spoken in minutes. He just stood there, towering and silent, staring at the babies. The boy slept peacefully, his little fist curled tight near Zahara's collarbone. The girl's eyes remained wide, impossibly alert for a newborn. "They're named already?" he asked at last, his voice quiet. Zahara nodded slowly. "The girl is Amira. The boy, Malik." He swallowed hard. Amira, Malik. Names full of meaning, royalty and strength. She had chosen names that reflected legacy, that carried something of his heritage, even without him. Zahara saw the look in his eyes and spoke before he could ask. "Yes, they're yours. Both of them." He sat down slowly in the chair beside her bed, the expensive fabric of his suit wrinkling without care. He looked older than she remembered, wiser, maybe, but wearier too, as if the past year had aged him more than a decade. "Why?" he finally asked. "Why did you leave like that, Zahara? No calls, no goodbye, no answers. And now I find you here, giving birth to my children in a hospital hallway." Her eyes fell. She adjusted the blanket around Amira and exhaled deeply. "I was scared," she admitted. "Scared of being rejected. Scared of becoming a scandal. You and I, we lived in different worlds, Khalid. You were being groomed to take your father's empire. I was just the African girl you fell in love with when no one was watching. You think your family would have accepted this?" Khalid clenched his jaw. Her words cut deep, not because they were wrong, but because they reminded him of everything he had allowed to happen. "My father's dead," he said. "Died 6 months ago." Zahara looked up sharply. "I didn't know." "I didn't either at first. The man barely spoke to me during his last year. He couldn't accept how I'd changed, how you'd changed me. He tried to erase you from my life." He paused, swallowing emotion. "I let him." Zahara blinked rapidly, trying to process what he was saying. "Then why are you here?" "Because I never stopped loving you," he said plainly. "And now, I have 2 children I didn't even know existed. I won't walk away from this. Not again." A silence fell between them, heavy, complicated, fragile. Then the door creaked open. A tall, bald man in a gray uniform stepped in, followed by 2 nurses. One of them whispered something into her radio. The other smiled awkwardly and began tidying the room. "Is something wrong?" Zahara asked, frowning. "No, ma'am," the bald man replied. "But the media found out." "What?" "You were brought in during a hospital donation event. There were journalists outside. Some recognized Mr. Al-Fahim. And then, well, someone saw you being rushed in, holding hands." Zahara's cheeks flushed. She looked at Khalid. "You held my hand?" she asked, almost incredulous. He smiled faintly. You were in pain, and I didn't want to let go. The nurse pulled open the curtains just enough for them to peek. Outside the hospital window, at least a dozen cameras flashed from the street below. Someone had already posted something on social media. The hashtag #AlphaHimTwins was beginning to trend. This wasn't how I wanted the world to find out, Zahara muttered. Khalid stood and walked to the window, watching the frenzy with quiet fury. They don't matter, he said. Not them, not their headlines. Only this moment. Only them. He turned back and looked at the babies again. I want to be their father, Zahara. For real. I know I failed before, but I won't now. Let me be in their lives. Zahara searched his face for a long time. Finally she nodded. Then, prove it. Be here tomorrow, and the day after. Be here for the cries, the sleepless nights, the diapers, the fevers, not just the photographs. He walked back to her, gently placing a hand on Malik's tiny foot. I will, he said. You'll see. And in that moment, while the world outside gossiped, clicked, judged, they sat quietly in that sterile hospital room, two people forever changed by a truth they could no longer hide. Because love doesn't knock twice. Sometimes it crashes through the door holding twins. The following morning, Khalid didn't return to his office. He didn't answer his assistant's calls. He didn't review the quarterly acquisitions plan waiting in his inbox. And when the Crown Prince's advisor sent a discreet message asking if the rumors were true, Khalid read it and set his phone down without reply. Instead, he was still at Al Hayat Royal Hospital, sitting on the small vinyl couch beside Zahara's bed, in the same crumpled suit from the day before. His tie was gone, his shirt collar open, his wristwatch ticking quietly into the silence. Across from him, Zahara slept lightly, her arm draped around the two newborns, now swaddled side by side in their bassinet. The morning sun cast long golden shadows on her skin, softening the lines of exhaustion on her face. Even in recovery, she radiated strength. Khalid couldn't stop staring at them, at his children. It didn't feel real. Not yet. For 42 years, his world had been about control. Boardrooms, stock prices, legacy, family honor. He was the heir to a billion-dollar empire built on oil, tech, and real estate. His name carried weight in every corner of the Gulf. And yet, no one had prepared him for the tremble in his chest when his daughter curled her fingers around his thumb for the first time, or the quiet gasp he released when his son hiccuped in his sleep. This was chaos, and it was perfect. Zahara stirred, her eyelids fluttering open. You didn't leave, she said softly. I couldn't, he replied. She adjusted her posture, wincing slightly, and glanced at the clock. "You've been here all night?" He nodded. "Didn't want to miss anything." Zahara blinked in surprise, unsure whether to believe it. In the college she once knew, the man so proud, so unreachable, this kind of gesture had been unthinkable. But the man sitting beside her now looked different, less armored. "I meant what I said," he added. "I want to be their father, not just the man who shows up with gifts once a year. I want to be present." Zahara studied him carefully. "Then you'll have to earn it." "I will," he said, without hesitation. But before the conversation could continue, a knock tapped at the door. "Come in," Khalid said, standing up instinctively. The door opened to reveal a woman in her early 50s, impeccably dressed in a silk navy abaya with a gold-trimmed scarf. Her posture was regal, her expression unreadable. Zahara froze. Khalid's voice dropped. "Mother." The air turned cold. Zahara instinctively pulled the bassinet closer to her side. "Khalid," the woman said, voice cool and clipped. "I came as soon as I saw the headlines. I hoped it was a mistake." "It's not," he said calmly. "These are my children." She looked at Zahara, then at the babies, her lips pressing into a hard line. "A scandal like this will not be easily forgotten. You know what this does to our name, what it does to you." Khalid walked toward her, steady and unshaken. "You think I care about legacy right now? About board seats and wedding gossip? I just met my children. I won't lose them too." His mother's voice lowered to a whisper. "You'll lose everything else." "I already did," he said. "The day Zahara left, I lost more than I realized. Now, I have a chance to get it back." There was a long pause. Then, his mother's tone shifted, softer, almost disappointed. "She left you once, without explanation. How do you know she won't do it again?" Zahara straightened. "Because I'm not running anymore. I was trying to protect my children from rejection, from shame. But they deserve better, and so do I." The older woman turned toward her son, her eyes narrowing. "You've always had a weakness for rebellion, but this—" Khalid raised his voice slightly, but not with anger, only conviction. "This is not rebellion. This is responsibility. And if that makes me a disappointment, so be it." The room was silent. Then his mother looked at the babies again. For the first time, her gaze softened just enough. Amira made a soft noise in her sleep, and the older woman's eyes flickered. Without another word, she turned and walked out. Zahara exhaled slowly, heart pounding. "You didn't have to choose me over your family," she said quietly. "I didn't," Khalid replied, returning to her side. "I chose my own family." He placed a gentle kiss on Amira's forehead, then one on Malik's tiny cheek. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like a man chasing approval. He felt like a father. The next few days passed in a blur of hospital routines. Nurses entering and leaving, doctors checking vitals, soft lullabies echoing from the newborn wing. Khalid never left Zahara's side. He held bottles. He learned how to swaddle. He stood stunned as Malik cried for 2 hours straight without explanation, and cheered softly when Amira smiled for the first time in her sleep. He had seen billion-dollar contracts collapse with less stress than changing his daughter's diaper. But still, he stayed. Zahara watched him with cautious admiration. This wasn't the Khalid she had known before, the man who disappeared behind office doors and diplomatic dinners. This Khalid looked tired, disheveled, human. But outside their little hospital bubble, the storm was growing. Paparazzi swarmed the entrance. Media speculation twisted the story into every angle imaginable. Illegitimate heirs, love affair or power play, Arab mogul's secret African twins. The tabloids didn't care about the truth, only headlines. And then the board made its move. Khalid's assistant, Rami, arrived early on the 4th morning, looking nervous. He knocked once and stepped into the room, holding a sleek black envelope. "I didn't want to send this by email," Rami said, glancing uncomfortably at Zahara, then at the twins. "But the board convened last night. Emergency session." Khalid took the envelope, opened it calmly. Inside was a formal letter, no emotion, no warmth. Just the cold, calculated language of men in suits. The board strongly encourages Mr. Al-Fahim to resolve his current personal entanglements in a private and discreet manner, in order to preserve the company's image and long-standing reputation in conservative business circles. Khalid read it twice, then folded it and placed it on the side table without saying a word. Zahara bit her lip. "They want you to abandon us. They want me to choose," he said simply. "Again." "And you?" she asked. "What do you want?" He looked at her, not just at her face, but at everything she was holding. 2 infants, his children, his future. "I want my children to carry my name," he said, his voice suddenly heavier. "I want them to walk freely in this world without shame or secrecy. I want you to never again feel like you're less because of where you were born or what your skin looks like." Zahara's voice dropped. "You know what that means. If their names are Al-Fahim, they'll never live normal lives." "They deserve more than normal," he said. "They deserve everything." The room was still. Then Zahara reached for his hand. "You realize what you're risking, don't you?" Khalid nodded. "I do." That afternoon, he made the decision official. He walked out of the hospital with a quiet dignity, past the flashing cameras, past the shouted questions, and straight to the family court. In front of a judge and under oath, he acknowledged both children as his heirs, Amira Khalid Al-Fahim and Malik Khalid Al-Fahim. And the world exploded. Some praised him for breaking tradition. Others condemned him for tarnishing it. Old friends distanced themselves. A cousin removed him from a will. A key investor threatened to pull out of a major hotel deal in Morocco. But Khalid didn't flinch, because when he returned to the hospital that night, he found Zahara sitting in a chair by the window, holding a mirror, while Malik slept in the bassinet beside her. And when she looked up at him, there was something different in her eyes. Not doubt, not fear, but respect. "You really did it," she said, almost in disbelief. He knelt beside her and kissed his daughter's forehead. "I'd do it again tomorrow." Zahara placed a hand over his. "This doesn't fix the past, Khalid, but it gives us a future." He met her gaze, unwavering. "That's all I want." In that room, far above the noise of headlines and expectations, a man once shackled by legacy finally chose something bigger than reputation. He chose love, and in doing so, he gave his children something priceless, not just a name, but a father. It had been a week since Khalid gave his children his name. 1 week since the world shifted beneath him. The hospital finally discharged Zahara and the twins, and instead of returning to her modest apartment in Bur Dubai, she accepted Khalid's invitation to stay temporarily at his private residence in Emirates Hills. It wasn't just a home. It was a fortress. White stone walls draped in flowering vines, glass walls opening into a courtyard with a tranquil fountain, staff that moved like shadows. But inside, everything had changed. The nursery, once designed for guests' children, was now filled with Amira's soft cries and Malik's gurgling laughter. Khalid had cleared his schedule, cancelled international meetings, rescheduled every boardroom battle. He was, for the first time in his adult life, present. And yet, something lingered in Zahara's silence. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon and cast an orange glow across the marble floor, she sat alone in the garden, holding Amira close to her chest. Khalid watched her from the doorway, knowing she was somewhere far away. He walked toward her and sat beside her on the cushioned bench. "You've been quiet." She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she rocked gently, humming a lullaby from her childhood. Finally, she looked at him. "I didn't disappear just because I was afraid," she said. Khalid listened. "I was pregnant in Nairobi when I got the call. Your father, he knew." Khalid's blood ran cold. "He called me," Zahara continued, "said he would destroy you, that the board would strip your control of the family trust, that I was a liability, that if I really cared about you, I'd vanish." Khalid's jaw tensed. "He did what?" Zahara's voice was steady. "He offered money. I refused, so he threatened to drag my name through the media. Said he'd spread stories about my past. Said no child of mine would carry the Al-Fahim name. I was scared, and you didn't answer my calls. I thought maybe he was right." "I never got those calls," Khalid said, eyes burning. He must have blocked you. He did more than that. A man came to my apartment 2 days later. He said it would be safer if I left Dubai entirely. He gave me a ticket. I was 3 months pregnant, alone, and I left because I believed walking away would protect you. Khalid stood, fists clenched. That bastard tried to erase you. Zahara nodded. But he's gone now, and you're here. I should have known. I should have looked for you. You couldn't have. He made sure of it. Khalid turned and looked out across the city skyline. So many years of living under the weight of his father's expectations, of being the polished heir, the perfect son. He thought the old man had died quietly, but even in death, he had left a stain. And now Khalid understood something deeper. This wasn't just about love. It was about freedom, from legacy, from fear. We rewrite the story, Khalid said, turning back to her. From this day forward. She looked at him, unsure. And the world? They won't forget. Your board won't forgive you for choosing me. He knelt beside her. I don't need their forgiveness. I need my children to know I chose them, that I chose you. At that moment, a soft chime echoed from the courtyard gates. Rami entered, cautious. Sir, there's someone here, from Nairobi. Khalid frowned. Who? But before Rami could answer, a woman stepped forward. A dark-skinned woman in her 40s, wearing a tailored beige suit. Her face was familiar to Zahara. Naomi? Zahara stood, startled. Naomi approached slowly, tears in her eyes. I kept them safe. All those months. When you were alone, and scared, and hiding. I helped you. Zahara covered her mouth. I thought I'd never see you again. Naomi turned to Khalid. I was the one who got her out. Your father didn't know I had my own reasons. What do you mean? Naomi took a breath. He paid me to monitor her. But I had a daughter once too. She died during childbirth. I couldn't watch another woman go through that alone, so I protected her. And your children. Khalid looked at her with disbelief. You betrayed my father to save my family. Naomi nodded. I don't regret it. He stepped forward and shook her hand. Then you're part of this story now, too. As the sun set behind them, painting the sky in deep red and gold, Zahara held her daughter close and whispered, This time, no one hides. No more secrets. And Khalid, holding Malik in his arms, finally felt like he wasn't just rebuilding a life. He was creating one. 2 days later, Khalid received a letter delivered by private courier. Inside, a legal agreement. His uncle, now acting board chair, was offering him a way out. Step down quietly. Sign over your voting rights. Walk away, and your children will be left in peace. Khalid read it in silence, then tore it in half. The next morning, he called a press conference. With Zahara by his side and his twins in his arms, he told the world the truth. I am no longer just an executive. I am a father, and no amount of money, reputation, or tradition will ever come before that. The headlines turned, slowly, from scandal to respect, from shame to admiration. Khalid entered the boardroom for the last time. The men who once feared his father stared at him in cold silence. He smiled. "You taught me how to build empires," he said, "but my children taught me how to live." He placed his resignation on the table, then walked out, with nothing in his hands, yet everything he ever needed waiting at home. Months passed. The world moved on. But Khalid didn't. He learned how to braid Zahara's hair, how to calm Amira during fevers, how to rock Malik to sleep with stories about stars over the desert. Love had replaced legacy, and in their small house in Nairobi, far from towers of glass and gold, he found something priceless: peace. Years later, on Amira and Malik's first day of school, the teacher asked gently, "And what is your father's job?" Amira looked up, grinning proudly. "He's not just a businessman. He's ours." And in that moment, Khalid knew. He had given them more than a name. He had given them a story.